Hello, everyone, and welcome to Golden Talks. In this session, we're going to talk with a guy that have a remarkable contributions in the Oracle University, and I'm very pleasure to have you here in the Golden Talks today. And probably he needs no introduction. I'm talking about Chris Saxon. He is an Oracle Developer Advocate, and is gonna share with us many things that he's working for the last years. So let me call him. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great, Justin. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great too. Thank you very much to be here with us in the Golden Talks and to uh, had this time to share knowledge and information with us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I think it's really cool you're doing these kind of chats to kind of help speak with the community, reach out and get to know people, right?
Yes, and for the people that it's not aware what Golden Talk it's about, we here do talks and podcasts to share knowledge and experience with professional guys, and especially to know a little bit more the person behind the professional. And today we're gonna talk about many things, and we also will know a little bit more about Chris, right, Chris?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds good. I think we've all got a story, right? So we'll find out some things.
Yeah, and I can tell you in advance that Chris, it's a guy that have some tricks that sometimes he can get me. So let's see what's gonna happen in this conversation today.
I'll
Okay,
be nice, right? I won't catch you out today.
all right, all right. If you not be nice, I'm gonna send you some difficult to ask you to you have a lot of difficult to do some performance or something like that. Okay.
Okay. Oh, that's fun, right? So.
All right. So
Right.
I always starting our talking, asking you to say what you're doing now in your job and what you are working on. So can you explain to us how it's your job right now as an Oracle Developer Advocate?
Yeah, it's quite a wide, varied role, right? There's quite a bit to it. So part of it is kind of doing things with the community. So that's partly, getting involved with people like yourself, doing these interviews, presenting at conferences, writing blog posts, and otherwise creating content to help the Oracle community and people learn and understand how to work with Oracle database, and hopefully have a bit of community and fun while doing that. But also, I'm also a bit kind of focused on some internal stuff as well. There's always new features that we're looking at adding to the SQL language. So discussing with the developers about what should we do or don't want to include, what's the best way, which prioritizing. So like I say, it's quite a varied role. There's quite a lot to it. And then there's also like the DevGym, which is like the quiz taking site, which I've been managing for a few years now. So there's got lots of little bits and bobs that I do with, enough to keep me busy, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a lots of things. And tell us, how do you find the inspiration to do all of this work that you have been doing? Because you have a YouTube channel, you have blogging, you have DevGym, as you mentioned, you also have some work in Eston of C hours. And tell us
Mm.
all the other things that you are doing, but especially from where comes this inspiration to share knowledge and experience in a way that you are doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's partly something where I'm kind of curious. I like to know how things work and understand them. And certainly like you say, working on Ask Tom, I'm seeing people's questions and they're like, well, why does it do this? Or why does it not do that? Or how do I do that? And then like, well, that's interesting. Why doesn't it work? What is the right way to do this? So I think I just kind of, I find that interesting and fun to kind of figure out and think about these challenges, think of better ways to doing things. But then there's also the side of like sharing that knowledge with other people and helping other people learn skills, like valuable skills. I've had a good career writing SQL and working with Oracle database. I think it's good to help other people get that opportunity and build that knowledge. So, when we share things, we all get a bit better and stronger, right? So I think it, it's just it's something. I'm not sure where it comes from exactly, but it's just something in my brain kind of like enjoys these things and enjoys kind of sharing and learning together.
All right. It seems the connection is not so good. I'm sorry for that. Can you see that it's like let me see if it's something from my side. Maybe something
It's okay, my side.
Okay, now it's better. Okay. Okay. Last question. That's fine. All right. And how this works and these ideas started? And actually, let's start from the beginning.
Mm.
How did you started looking for study and work with computers, with IT, and so on?
Yeah, okay, we'll go right back a long time ago now. So remember when I was a kid, one day my dad brought home from work some kind of it was a laptop of some description. I can't remember. It was something you opened it up and it had like a blue screen. Like it was quite limited. It was all kind of character based. This would have been early 90s, right? I kind of think it was long time ago. So that was something, and I was just kind of fascinated by it. I was always interested, and he kind of let me use it occasionally. There was like a little solitaire game, like a solitaire card game you could play on it, which I enjoyed. And then a few years later, we got like a home computer, like a 386 PC, which I really enjoyed. Kind of got that and really got into kind of games like Doom and things like that. And I like playing these games, but I also thought, well, it'd be kind of nice to be able to create these games. So I thought, well, I want to teach myself programming. So I went out and got, if you know the For Dummies books. So I got the C for Dummies and C++ for Dummies, went through and taught myself those. And so that's kind of how I kind of got started. That's the thing that got me thinking about computing. And then I wanted to, I knew this was something I enjoyed and it kind of interested me. So when I studied computer science at university to kind of deepen my knowledge and really actually get some formal education rather than just reading a book and teaching myself. So I did that for a few years. And then when I graduated, got a job as a PL/SQL developer, which is how I got started with Oracle database. So that's kind of like the early years of how I got started.
And this is the moment that you started entering the Oracle world with PL/SQL, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I worked for it was quite a small company. There's only like 10 or 20 of us working there at a time. So you had to build up your skills quite quickly because, when it's a small company, you have to kind of cover a lot of roles. But primarily, we were building an application based on PL/SQL for a factory. So, I had to learn quite quickly because at that point, I think at university I'd had like one or two modules or lectures on SQL, so like 1 or 2 hours total. And I wasn't really paying attention at the time, shall we say? So I didn't really remember them. So it's quite a steep learning curve, but still, I enjoyed it, learned a lot, and I thought really wanted to kind of get into the deep and learn about how this all works and go from there, basically.
Nice, nice. And there was any reason that you started uh, going deep with Oracle, with SQL, and so on? There is something that happened because today you have a huge experience and work with SQL performance, and something happened to you starting going deeper with that.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's something where like I say, I'm curious about things. I like to know how things work, and so and I like being good at things as well. I like knowing how it works and feeling like competent and like I can do things. So I just spent my own partly at work and partly a bit of my own time spending time learning how things work. And it's really like, if you're in a situation where you've got a SQL statement and you're not sure why it's working or what it's doing, is like spending some time to really kind of understand it and think or ask people and say, I don't get it, what's going on here, and try and figure it out. So I think, I needed to have these skills for my job, and I wanted to do a good job, right? So I think just that kind of curiosity and desire to learn and be better at things or improve myself, just built those skills up over time, basically.
Mhm. Cool, cool. This is very interesting, Chris, because the way that you started to share how things work, it's really nice. And I'm gonna put some videos here
Mm,
to people see. And if
mm,
you want to talk a little bit how the idea started to create some videos and to get some abstract things, abstract concepts, and present it in a very interesting, fun, and clever way. Because the video is really, really, really nice how you demonstrated how SQL and Oracle internals works.
mm. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you appreciated it. At least it works for someone, right? So I think it's well, I think the videos came about because at the time, I was had a job and I was like a manager slash developer slash DBA. Again, it was quite a varied role that I had, and I saw a job came up at Oracle working. So Stephen Feuerstein, who was like one of the PL SQL gurus, had joined Oracle about 6 months before that, and said he was trying to build a team of developer advocates. And I saw this advertised. I think it was on Twitter. I saw it, and I was like, well, I got to kind of give that a try, right? It sounds fun, sounds interesting. Um, so I went through a big interview process with that, and that was interesting. And then um, somehow managed to get the job. Right, somehow convinced people I know stuff about Oracle and SQL. And part of the job was then creating these videos to help people understand it. And I think one of the things I think a lot of people seem to struggle with is like, well, I've got some code, and it applies for SQL, but it's also all programming languages, really. I think a lot of people look at it and then kind of can struggle, like, well, how does that translate into what actually happens? What's going on here? So I think it's really, I try to create, like you say, these visual metaphors or visual demonstrations of what's going on to kind of help people kind of go, well, okay, I can see if I've got I've got my big box of bricks here and I want to find all the red ones. So you go through and filter out what those are. So I think those visual demonstrations, but I find them useful, and and it
Mhm.
seems other people find them useful as well.
Sure, sure. For sure, it was really, really useful. It's like get some complex concepts and show it in a slow motion with a big didactic presentation, right? And this is really
Hmm.
clever, and I really like this kind of approach because sometimes I try to do some things like this também, and I know how it's difficult we share complex concepts in a nice and
Hmm.
easy way to understand, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And okay, then you started the video. You also mentioned that with that you started working with Oracle in this new team. And tell us what happened then. Did you already had your blog? The DevGym when it came, which was before and after that?
Yeah, so that's so well. Part of the reason that I sort of knew Stephen a little bit before applying for the job, was because, well, 15 years ago now, I think about 15 years ago, he created a site called the PL SQL Challenge, and at the time he had this idea: he'd create a new question every day about PL SQL topics. How do you create a net? What types of array are there in PL SQL? Something like that, and and there'd be various things you could choose from, and you could compete, and the scores were ranked, and there was competitions and things for that. So I've been taking part in this for a little while, like a year or two, I can't remember. And I thought, well, I like answering the questions, but I also thought, well, I want to write questions as well because Stephen's very focused on PL SQL. I wanted to kind of create questions on like database design. How do you structure tables? What's normalization? That kind of thing. So I pitched him the idea of that. We'd create some quizzes on that, and he agreed. He said, "Well, write some quizzes, get it together, and we'll go." And I was like, "Okay, I better do that then." So I managed to get that, and I was creating a weekly. I couldn't manage a daily quiz. I still don't know how Stephen managed daily quizzes for as long as he did, but anyway. Um, so I've been doing weekly quizzes on the PL SQL Challenge for a year or two. Before this, I saw the job come up. And then when we joined, as part of Stephen joining Oracle, the PL SQL challenge was going to kind of move to the Oracle domain and things like that. So that's when we rebranded it Oracle DevGym. And really kind of built that kind of content there to expand it and build on it. So we started looking at things like creating some of the classes that we've created on Oracle DevGym to help people get started with SQL and learn how it works as well. So that's kind of the background there, and I think a lot of things happened in a short space of time after joining Oracle, right? Because I started with the videos, and that's when I started blogging and presenting as well. So those were, I'd done a bit of blogging, but presenting was, or at least presenting technical stuff was something that was kind of new for me. So it was quite, again, another big learning curve, a lot to kind of get to grips with, but it was fun. And I think it was certainly helps improve my skills as well, right? It's one thing being able to type it, but as soon as you start explaining something to someone else, you go, you go like, oh, I'm not quite sure I know how this works, because I go, you do this and then magic happens, and then somehow you get this result, and you're like, oh, I have to figure out what this magic bit in the middle is, right? So people can know what's going on.
Yeah, this sounds good. Usually we say that one way to you learn is you teach other, and this is when you're gonna see if your concepts it's okay, right? And
Definitely.
to do all of this, yeah, to do all of these things, just work. There are more people helping you, or you and Stevie do everything.
Yeah, so I think at the time when Stephen joined, there was several others in the team. So we worked for Stephen. Connor McDonald joined the team shortly after, and it was not long after that actually that Tom Kite retired. So Tom Kite, the original database guru, has the Ask Tom website, and he announced he was officially retiring. And so it was like, well, we've got this site that's really popular. Ask Tom, what do we do with it? Who's going to answer questions? And someone going, oh, there's these guys under Stephen who can do this, like me and Connor. It's like, okay, I guess I could do that, right? That'd be kind of cool. So there was the two of us. There was a few other guys. There was Dan and Blaine, who focused more on on developer technologies, Python, and working with database with Python and things like that, and JavaScript. So there was a group of us. Over time, things have changed a bit. Stephen left Oracle a few years ago, but now I'm working with Gerald Wenzel, and we're focused kind of on application developers, or helping developers be successful with Oracle database. So it's not just me. There are other people I talk to. Like I say, I speak to the actual developers of Oracle database reasonably often when there's things where I don't know what's going on or why they're not working. So sometimes I have to reach out to them for an explanation. So yeah, there's a lot of people in the background. There always is, right? Whenever you build anything.
Nice, nice. It's as I said, a lot of work in school that I have a team with that. And what is the things that you most like doing all of these contributions and these contents? What do you like most?
It's a good question. I think I always like it when people have kind of interesting SQL questions. Like, I'm trying to do something and I don't really know how, or I'm trying to optimize this and what's a better way of doing it. Those are always interesting. If they, particularly when it's not obvious what the answer is, and you got to think about it and kind of figure out what's going on and try and think of a way to explain it. I think there's always a lot of kind of yeah, like putting presentations together is interesting, because you always end up having to do a lot of work, double checking. Am I saying something that is true? Does it work? Does it do this thing? So there's a lot of kind of poking around. So a lot of my days actually spent like just running SQL and going, well, what's going on there? How does that work? Either that's to build a presentation, write a blog post, figure out how some things work, answer someone's question. I'm always kind of like typing away, trying to figure it out and see how we can make it get to the bottom of what's going on.
Mhm. Nice, nice. And there was anything there actually. Did you find something that you was not able to resolve or to explain with SQL, for instance, or something that you said, "Oh, this is really, really hard and difficult, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I, I can't. There's always things which, at first glance, are kind of hard and difficult. I think there's lots of little bits and niche features of Oracle database or things that aren't used very well, where it's not obvious or it's not fully documented, and you end up having to reach out to the development team and like going, oh, I just don't get it, or I don't know what's going on here. What was Kim asking me about the other day? Oh, he was trying to merge a table to its, like the merge statement, insert of exists, updated, not, upsert operation. And he was trying to merge a table onto itself and he was getting an error. And he was like, well, is this right? I'm like, why is this error? And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know. It's like, I can see arguments both ways, right? I can see why it could be an error, but also why you expect it should work. So I had to reach out to the developers, and they're like, "Yeah, it's doing what it's supposed to do, right?" And some of these things, there isn't like a big, deep technical reason. It's that way because that's the people who designing it decided that's how it would work, right? Someone made a decision and said we want it to work like this and not like that, or we just could have done this, but it wasn't a priority, so we never got round to it. And of course, the only way you can find out things like that is by actually asking the people involved. A lot of whom are still around at Oracle, but some of them aren't. And so some of these things you can't quite figure out, and some things you just can't get to the bottom of, unfortunately. So I think, yeah, it's the things where it's knowing the motivation or the reason behind why functionality works that way is not always possible to figure out, because it's, like I say, it's just somebody's decision rather than explaining the how of the functionality. It's like the why, right? So some of those things can be tough to answer.
Right, right, cool. And we're going to talk about AI, but before that, and with your thoughts, talking about SQL, what do you recommend, or what can you share with people that it's starting to learn from zero? What do you recommend? How they would start learning SQL?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is just kind of trying things out and play around. Here at Oracle, we've got numerous free offerings to kind of actually get an environment. You've got Live SQL, which is like the browser-based thing. If you don't want to sign up or install anything, there's Oracle Cloud, where you can get an autonomous database, or there's Oracle Database Free, which is just a completely free thing you can download and run on your local machine. And it's just resource limited. So I think making sure you got an environment to work with. But then, like I say, on DevGym, we created these classes, the databases for developers series. The idea is that hopefully it teaches you, if you know nothing about SQL, and so that's a great way to kind of get started. How to create a table, how to write a select statement, how to write insert, update, delete, that kind of thing. So if you know nothing, I'd start looking at that and try that out, and hopefully, get going. But I think once you kind of start to get the basics, just then start poking around, trying things out, seeing how it works for yourself. And if you get stuck, then reach out for questions and, send us questions, ask Tom or whatever, and kind of build your knowledge from there. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And there are also some databases that don't use SQL, right? And you have a lot of experience with SQL for many years. What do you think about this database that don't use SQL? They don't SQL DB. And if there are some DBA that don't work with SQL database, you're gonna be friend of me or no?
Oh no, no, it's fine. I think, um, I think one of the things is, it was about 10 years or so ago, maybe a bit more. There was like the whole no SQL, no SQL movement, and it was actually really a lot of different things that all just kind of got lumped together because they didn't necessarily have a SQL interface. And a lot of those databases over time have now actually added some form of SQL-like interface. So I think one of the things that's SQL's proven, at least at the basic level, is it's just a very useful way to interact with data. I think, it's quite short. Actually, if you know something, I think it's like, if you know 20 SQL keywords, you can write some really powerful things. So obviously select from, where, join, order, group, and a few others, plus the insert, update, delete. You can do 90% of what you'll need to do day to day, and there's all the other stuff which can take you further, but you can go really far with just those. So I think having something which resembles natural language and is simple to use and quite at the basics at least is quite small has just proven very useful. And but other databases do have other approaches. We do kind of keep an eye on what other people are doing to kind of think, well, do we need that kind of functionality in Oracle database? Should we build something like that? So occasionally we do, but I think SQL's been around. It was 50 years old last year, and I'm pretty confident SQL will still be here in another 50 years, right? Yeah.
Okay, I was saying that
Yeah.
sorry, 50 years, it's a time that it's a good time to have some technology consolidated, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then there are some people that come and try to change everything.
Yeah. Well,
It's just a joke. Yeah. Otherwise, the people are gonna
yeah,
sell me on
yeah.
the social networks. It's joking, guys. Okay?
Yeah.
But but you can talk about this. We have SQL for many years, and now this new technology. What do you think about that? Knowing the internals, as you know, you mentioned that with few words we can do many things with SQL, but maybe about performance or a paradigm. Do you think it's nice to have a database with no SQL? What is your vision about this?
Yeah, well, I think again, when a lot of these NoSQL databases came about, a lot of them were solving a specific problem, right? They wanted graph databases or network databases, or they wanted to kind of shard database really easily. And quite often, a lot of these solved a specific problem, and increasingly, a lot of these things have been absorbed into actually all the relational databases. Most of the relational databases have absorbed a lot of these other features in one way or another. Like all the all the databases now have significant ways of working with JSON functionality, for example, right? Um, so, and recently we've got the SQL PGQ, so the graph query language, and which is part of the SQL standard, and we've got it in Oracle database as well. So if you need to do network graph queries, you've got that capability. So I think a lot of these things eventually over time, partly just the improvements in hardware every year, computers get a little bit faster, a little bit better. So the need for kind of like a specialized solution to solve something reduces, and increasingly these things do get incorporated into all the relational databases, really. So that's not to say there will never be a need for some of these things. If you've got a really specific use case which has very well defined requirements that needs a specific solution, go for it. That might be the right thing. But at least in my experience, generally a database, it has a primary use. It's the database behind your website for taking orders or something like that. That's its main use, but you'll do a bit of reporting on it, and you'll do a bit of other things on it as well. So I think most databases end up, at least people want them to be kind of slightly multi-use. Otherwise, you get this place where you've got to take data out of one database and put it in your other one just to kind of do some reporting on it or something like that. And certainly for kind of intensive analysis, that kind of makes sense. But if you just want to run a little basic, what was our orders yesterday? You don't want to have to do all these kind of transformations and things. So, yeah, I'd say over time, I think this functionality just gets built into relational databases one way or the other.
Nice, nice. And you mentioned one thing that I think it's very nice to talk. It's because it's about the hardware. And talk about SQL and performance and relational database. We know that there are many developers that sometimes create some queries that search more data that it's needed, and the performance is really bad,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the solution is not to improve the PLC or the query. The solution is just to do an upgrade of the hardware. So what do you think about that? Because I don't know if it's a reality for you, but it's a reality for us here in Brazil. I saw this for many years. Instead of try to improve the code, let's upgrade the hardware and solve the issues.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
for the
it's
whole.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I think certainly every 3 to 5 years, if you upgrade your hardware, you're going to get a big boost in performance just because computers have got faster, more efficient, and more optimized. Um, and I think the kind of the performance tuning guy inside me always thinks, well, it's better to just write code that's going to be efficient, and you don't have to upgrade your hardware to make things faster. Um, um, but at the same time, I guess in some ways you've got to think, well, it's a business decision. Um, if the business is happy to spend the money upgrading the hardware versus paying developers to tune the product or DBAs to kind of analyze things, well, that's their call, right? But I think it is worth spending time thinking about, how can we make things just more efficient to run? Because if you're not fighting performance, then you've got more time to think about how do we build new features, how do we make the customer experience better, and you can focus on that rather than the queries timing or the application servers are timing out because the query is running too long, and things like that. You can spend your time thinking about how you can actually give a better service rather than keep the service you've got running. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice. And we are gonna talk about AI, but hold on a little bit more, guys, because I have
Yeah.
another question in and continuing with this idea. And we know also that for many years, I think now it's better, but for many years it was a big challenger with the developers and the DBAs, right? And how was your experience with that? Did you developer guys still hating the DBA guys, or because or the DBAs maybe
Yeah.
don't like so much the developer because they're gonna say that the database is bad, but hey, it's not the database, it's the SQL, it's your command that it's not well. That was a little bit about
Yeah.
this experience.
Yeah, it was interesting because at one point my job was a developer DBA or a development DBA. So my job was actually to kind of sit in between the production DBAs who did the patching and things like that and backups, and work with the developers who did the majority of the coding, and just kind of help the developers understand, when do we need an indexes, review table design, things like that, and work with DBAs, make sure the deployments ran smoothly and things like that. And I think actually having someone doing a role like that is important because then it avoids the situation us versus them, and because you've got different concerns, right? DBAs want to make sure that the database keeps going and doesn't have no outages, it stays online, it's secure, it's patched, it's up to date, things like that. Developers want to release new functionality and deploy new features and stuff. And there is a bit of tension, there is a bit of risk. You introduce something new, it changes something which has an impact, right? So I think having someone to kind of sit in between them is really useful to help bridge the gap, right?
Nice, nice. Okay, and Chris, did you ever ask some deploy or did some deploy on Friday at 4:59, for instance?
I try to avoid it, right? Only if I really have to.
All right. You try to avoid, but sometimes happen or never happens.
I certainly I can't, maybe not Friday, for this time. I think at one time I was helping support the website for Flybe, which is like a regional airline in the UK, and so during the day the website was pretty busy, so we tried to avoid making changes as much as possible just to keep risk down. So maybe not Friday to like 1 minute to 5, but Friday night, 1 a.m. on Friday night or Saturday night. Definitely did a few of those, making changes so they would be ready for Monday morning. which is, something. There is a kind of certain, there's a group of us. We'd make sure we do the release. I'd check the database. Developers would check their side of things. Got the people checking the application service. There is a kind of group, camaraderie and something about being working together. But at the same time, I'm really glad I don't do that anymore, right?
And what do you recommend, or what can you say for people that do this kind of deployments? It's here in Brazil, we have a term for this. It's like viver perigosamente. In translating to English, it's like living life at risk or something like this. Like do a deployment 1 to 5. What is your
Yeah, okay.
recommendation? What is your advice for people who do like this, and especially for the managers that approve it?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of that scares me, right? That makes me kind of
It scared
nervous.
me too.
Uh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
I've seen things go wrong, like badly wrong, when people
Yeah.
have that kind of approach. So I think it's important to kind of like make sure you just got a good testing process. I mean, people talk about things like continuous integration and continuous deployment, but I think fundamentally it's making sure that you've tested your release process and it actually works, and you've got a plan. If something does go wrong, what do we do, right? And I think actually sometimes just asking that question, if it goes wrong, what do we do? You can have an interesting discussion and think, well, okay, sometimes the answer is we just got to keep going and patching it. But other times the answer is, well, we've got to reverse the changes. Okay, how do we reverse those changes? How do we keep it safe and things like that? So it's just thinking a bit more. Like I say, ask the question: what if this goes wrong? What do we do? How do we? And just asking that is enough to, I think, to make people think, well, how do we stop it going wrong, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think personally, I used to spend a lot of time like testing releases and double checking everything would work, because like the idea of at 2 in the morning dealing with something where it's broken and you don't know why is I've had that and it's not been fun.
Yes, not fun. And you mentioned that sometimes it's needed to ask questions and think if anything's go wrong, what's gonna do. But if something go wrong, they can ask Tom for the solution.
Yeah, I mean they can try. We did have someone. What were they asking? Someone asked that something had clearly gone wrong on their production database. They'd lost a data
Mhm.
file or something like that, and they asked the
Oh my
question,
God.
"Oh, what happens if we lose a data file?" And I thought it was just kind of like they were curious, and I gave them an answer, and about an hour later they came back and said, "Well, I've tried that and it doesn't work, and now my database isn't working." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" You're just like, "Oh no, right? What are you doing?"
Oh, it's in production.
Yeah,
No, man, it's
so
not what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Oh my God. Nice, nice.
yeah.
And as you're talking about this, about Esketon and the questions, there are any situation, any questions that you remember that you was like remarkable or too fun, that you always
Mm.
remember that you can share to us?
Well, there was a recent one which someone asked, which I found quite interesting. They were like, they had they said, I need help optimizing this recursive with query, and they had this query, and basically they wanted to group things into batches of 7 days or something like that. And they said, like, this query, it's really slow, and it was taking minutes, and they showed a small data set. They had a nice sample data which is always great. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna look at this. This is gonna be interesting. And I could quite quickly see why it was so slow, because you can see in the plan how much data it was processing. And even though there was only like 24 rows in the table, it actually processed, because it read the same rows many, many times. It meant it was just rereading the data over and over. And I was like, I can see why this is going to be so slow. And I looked and I thought about it for a minute, and they was like, well, actually, this isn't a recursive with problem at all. It's a a SQL pattern matching problem. And it's like, well, just by changing the query, at least for the exact data I tried, performance was drastically better. It just scanned the table once rather than having to do all this recursive stuff. The query was also simpler. It was just much shorter. And, some of those recursive with queries can get quite long, particularly as they're having to do some kind of complicated calculations in there as well. So I think that was it was an interesting example because, you said we're mentioning AI. I think this is probably a good time to kind of mention AI a little bit. Because I was curious. I was like, I thought about this, come up with a solution. I was like, well, what would ChatGPT think about this, right? So I put their SQL statement into ChatGPT and see what it said. And the first thing it came back with was nonsense, just didn't work, right? And it took several tries. Eventually, it got to something which was close to working, but still not quite right. But it was still a recursive with query. And while with a bit of tweaking, it was faster than what the customer originally had, it was still substantially slower than the pattern matching solution. And it's one of those things, it's like, it reached that threshold of complexity where asking AI it helped a bit, but there was, knowing there's another way to solve this. From my experience, I knew there was a better way of doing it. And if you don't ask the AI that, then it's never going to come up with the faster way, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting insight as well, just kind of like see how those things work. Yeah.
Right. So you are saying that the AI can help people programming, but it's gonna AI replace the programmers?
So I think that's the big question, right? At the moment, and I think where we are at the moment is the answer is it's not going to, because there's still that after a certain point of complexity, when things get too specific or too complicated, the solutions it comes up with either just don't work, or they're just not relevant, or they need too much reworking after the fact. So I think, certainly for basic stuff, if I want to write a count all the rows in the table, you can ask AI, but also it's so basic, it's like, well, why do you need to ask AI, right? So it can, lots of people are saying it can help with productivity, and certainly for kind of generating boilerplate code, setup stuff, I can see that. At that moment, it's not good enough to kind of solve these kind of complicated problems. Will it ever get there? I don't know, maybe. It's like accountants, right? Accountants used to spend lots of their time in spreadsheets, literally just summing up. My dad's an accountant. He used to come home every night with massive printouts, just like, checking the numbers, making sure everything's correct. Now that's a 2-second job in Excel. You just do the sum and whatever and make sure it's right. But there's still loads of accounting jobs. In fact, there's more accountants now than there was 20 or 30 years ago. So I think that's the thing. I don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows. Is AI going to help developers, DBAs become more productive and actually mean there's more work, more jobs for them, or is it going to make jobs go away completely? I don't know. At the moment, it's clearly not that position where it can completely get rid of jobs, or at least I don't think it is. Will it get there? Who knows? Right.
Right. And do you have some tips, some advice for the programmers that it's learning or it's kind of lazy, who just using the AI instead of trying to understand and going deeper of what's really is going on?
Yeah. So I think it's still really important to understand the fundamentals and understand how things work. I actually use a kind of completely different example. A little while ago, I was in a different city and got a ride in a taxi. Like I got out the train station, just gone straight to get a taxi, and the driver asked where I was going, and I said, and it was a little tiny street, which is not many people would know. He's like, "Where is that?" I think I remember that. He'd been doing the job. He'd obviously been a taxi driver a long time. So we got discussing about things like, now obviously you can just look things up on map software, put in your destination, it shows you the route. And I was asking him how did he feel about that, and he kind of was torn, because he was like, well, it de-skills the job, which means there's more competition, right? But also makes the job less interesting for him, because you're saying he used to know all the roads in the city he works in, and he still mostly remembers them, but because he's starting to rely more on route finding software. He's starting to lose those skills, right? And I think it's that thing, if you're not practicing a skill regularly, you start to lose it. And, it's
Sim.
still important. Yeah. Like professional athletes, people at the top end of their game, they still practice the basics every day. Top football players, they'll spend an hour each day just kind of passing the ball backwards and forwards, right? Super basic stuff, because they know they need to do that to be able to do, you have a free kick and score from 30 yards out and score the goal at the finals. If you're not practicing those basics, you can't get to be those advanced skills. So, like I say, I think it's still important to know what's possible and practice it yourself, at least somewhat regularly, to kind of make sure you've got that understanding. And like I say, that the example I was talking a minute ago about pattern matching versus recursive width, if I, 20 odd years of writing SQL and 10 years of explaining it means I've got those instincts to know, okay, this is that type of problem. If you're not doing that practice regularly, you might ask the AI and it might give you a solution, but is it the best solution? And if you don't know other contexts, then how do you know to ask it a better solution, right? So I think practicing the basics is still important, and knowing the fundamentals, knowing what is possible, even if you don't know the specifics of how to do it, knowing, what things are used for and why, I think is still going to be a useful skill for quite a while still.
Right. This sounds really good, really good. Knowing the basics and the fundamentals is the base of everything, right? And you said one thing that I liked too, with the example of the ChatGPT, that you had an issue that you put on ChatGPT, and they didn't give the answer, but they give the route, the direction that you should focus. And maybe, don't know if you agree with me or not, but maybe this is a good way of use this kind of technology, this kind of AI to help us to do things faster. But as we always say, I'm a doctor, the ones who is gonna sign at the end, it's gonna be the doctor. The same for the professional
Mm-hmm.
guys, right? ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
is gonna help, but who's gonna sign at the end? That's gonna confirm everything. It's a person, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Right. And okay, let's talk about a little more about Chris now. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of technology that we talk about a lot for now, what do you do in your free time, Chris? What do you do when you are not working, studying? Share a little bit
Mm-hmm.
with
Yeah,
your.
so I've got a couple of Yeah, I've got two daughters who are they're still young. One of them, they're just coming up to be teenagers, so they occupy a fair bit of time. So we spend some time, playing games with them a fair bit, like playing on the Nintendo, playing Mario Kart, things like that. That's quite good fun. So that's,
I do the same. Yeah,
yeah,
it's Mario Kart in Nintendo. It's really nice for families, right?
yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
I forget there's one of the Mario games, I forget which one it's called, but there's like you're running all the four characters around and you have to pick each other up. You can pick each other up and throw each other off the screen, and it's great fun. So I think doing that's kind of good family bonding experience, right?
Yes. And who usually wins?
Well, it depends whether I'm being nice or not, right? I think I still just have the edge, but I think they've got more free time than I do, so it's clear they're starting to get more skilled, right?
That's what I say, right, right. Yeah, I'm asking this because I also have kids, and it's incredible how kids learn fast and do things that we as an adult think, hey, I even don't know how to do this, and they do. Oh my God, they are like
Mhm.
hackers in video games, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I learn a lot with my kid. It's incredible how I learn with him. It was supposed me teaching him the video game, but actually it's teaching me more than I do.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're starting to get to that point where they know more about the interesting thing is when they get stuck and they ask me and I'm like, I don't know because you've been playing this for 10 hours and you've just shown me and I'm like,
With the expectation that you're gonna solve the problem like in a second.
Yeah, exactly.
It happens to me too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
Right.
is other things that you like to do?
Yeah, so I stay pretty active, so I run quite regularly. I did many years ago. I did the New York Marathon, but since having kids, I don't quite have as much time to run that far. But I also do Taekwondo, so martial arts, quite regularly. So I've been do that. Actually, the club I go to, one of the instructors she just became European champion, which is quite impressive, right? So she's she's quite good. It's kind of scary. She could beat me up quite well, right? So yeah, that's something I've been doing for a few years now, and I think it's helped my flexibility a lot, right? I think spending a lot of time sitting at the desk, it's good to do
Yeah.
something that keeps you moving, right?
Right. Yeah, Taekwondo, it seems cool. It seems cool. And you have a really nice professor, right? Teacher, right? That
Yeah.
yeah, really, really nice. And do you like music, play some instrument, do some trip or things like this? True.
Yeah, actually, it was during COVID when we were during lockdowns. I got we got keyboards, and I got an app on my phone to kind of learn how to play keyboard. So I've been doing that. So do that every now and again. When that's quite a good way to kind of something to concentrate on, focus your mind, right, and think about. So I enjoy that too. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay, Chris, really nice this talk. We are almost 1 hour, and I want to thank you. I always say that when the talk is nice, it's passed so fast, and we are in 1 hour talking here in Golden Talks. So it's coming at the end, and I would like once again to thank you very much to share your time and your experience and knowledge with us here in Golden Talks. I really enjoy it, and hope we can plan other Golden Talk sessions to talk more about SQL and maybe AI, if it's gonna maybe sometimes substitute the programs or not.
Yeah, yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for inviting me. So maybe we'll catch up again sometime, right? Well, it just like I say, it's been great being here. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this, and I hope inspired some people to learn SQL and build their skills and knowledge, right?
All right, all right. Thank you, Chris. And I'm gonna finish as I always do. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe in this channel. And the most important thing, replicate this video and share your knowledge with the world. See you guys. Bye bye. And until the next Golden Talks session. Bye. And this time, I will not ask what you are doing now, because last time you get me like I was not expecting, and then I watched the video and I said, "Oh my god, I was not expecting that they would do this trip with me," and I stay like, "What am I gonna do now?" It was really fun. And I need to tell you one thing. I have a very difficult with some. How can I say this in English? Oh my god. It's like this kind of jokes, I'm a lazy guy, so there is sometimes that I recorded some funny stuff, and I will realize what the people was trying to say to me 2 or 3 days later. Can you imagine that? And here in Brazil, people love a lot with me because they do some tricks and I stay like, what? It's a trick, this?
Okay, right, yeah.
Really?
Right, yeah, that's okay.
And I'm kind of lazy with that. Okay? So it's like a Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, something like this.
Yeah,
I'm very literal in some things, and yeah. Okay, so just if it's something like this happen, don't worry about that. That's what happened last time. I was not expecting it. I was like, oh, but it was cool. It's very
yeah, that's right.